Today, I'm going to show you guys how to make your videos much more cinematic in 5 super easy steps. Let's get into it. What's going on, guys? And for those of you that don't know me, my name is James. I make videos here on YouTube to help filmmakers grow. If this is the type of content you guys are into, please think about hitting that subscribe button. You won't regret it. So these days, we are all striving to make our videos better. But if we can just understand the simple things behind making your footage more cinematic, we will straight away get much better results. And what if I told you with 5 easy steps, you can make your boring footage look cinematic very easy. Now, it doesn't matter what type of editing software you guys are using. I'm using Final Cut Pro, but I've also done the exact same things in Premiere Pro. But overall, in the big scheme of things, we are all getting the same results. Now, the first thing we need to do is make sure that our timeline is set in 24 frames a second. This is very important and the first step to getting good cinematic footage. Doesn't matter if you do all the other steps and you leave this step out, you are not going to get that cinematic look. So make sure your timeline or your project is set to 24 frames a second. Now, I hear you asking, that's great if I filmed everything in 24 frames. What happens if I filmed everything in 60 frames? Now, assuming that you filmed in 60 frames to be able to slow everything down, in something like Final Cut Pro, you just go in and you can slow it down manually, or in Premiere Pro, it's done a little bit different. In Premiere Pro, we need to go and modify our footage and interpret it to 24 frames. Straight away, that footage will be 24 frames and automatically slowed down to the 24 frames a second speed. So you want to make sure if you are going to be rendering out at 24 frames a second, make sure you film everything that you need to be at 24 frames, like talking headshots. Make sure it is always filmed at 24 frames a second. If you know you are going to be slowing down things in post, you are fine to use 60 frames or 120 frames and then slow it down to 24 frames or interpret it to 24 frames in post. But this is very important to get right from the start. The next thing is color correcting your footage. I have already posted a video on the difference between color grading and color correcting. If you guys want to check it out up there, that may help you guys understand what the difference is between color correcting and color grading. But in a quick summary, color correcting is just getting your footage to a good neutral base level. If your footage is maybe too warm or too cool, you can just go in and just correct that just to bring it back to the levels that you need it to be to make it look neutral. That goes with skin tones also. We want to make sure our skin tones are the most accurate possible. We don't want any color casting like magentas or greens on our skin tones, because when it comes time to color grading later on, you are adjusting colors that are then inaccurate. Now, the purpose of color correcting is not just to make sure we have neutral footage, but to make sure that our footage matches all the way down through every single clip. You don't want some clips to look warm and some clips to look cool. You want a nice even balance through your whole sequence. Also in this step, we have to Luma correct. Luma correct is pretty much just making sure our exposure is 100% correct throughout all our clips, and there is no point of our sequence that something is too bright or too dark. Now, how we go about this is by using scopes, and scopes are the scientific way of doing it and to making sure that our values are correct, and you can't always trust your eye. So being able to trust the scope is much more accurate. So for Luma correction, we use the Luma waveform. And as you guys can see, we have 0 right down the bottom and 100 right up the top. This represents 0 being the darkest point of our image and 100 being the brightest point of our image. So what we want to do is we want to have a pretty good spread between 0 and 100. You don't want to touch the 0 line and you don't want to touch the 100 line, because if you touch those lines and you go over those lines, details will be lost, and we don't want that. We want to retain the most amount of detail in our footage. So if you have something that is black in your image or very dark, similar to black, you want to go all the way down to 0, just a little bit above. If you have something that is white in your image or maybe a very bright sky, you want to take it almost all the way to 100. If you have something that is not as bright as pure white, you may decide to come down a little bit from the 100 mark. And likewise, if you have something that is not as dark as pure black, you may decide to come up 5 or 10 points. This is all personal preference. Some people like exposing darker, some people like the full range. This is up to you guys. Now, the next step in making your videos look more cinematic is color grading. And you don't have to go wild on color grading. Just keep it really simple. I have the philosophy, if you are not a colorist or you don't have years of experience, keeping it simple will give you a better final product than going wild with colors. I have also done a video on color grading in Final Cut Pro 10. Check that out if you guys want. That will give you a bit of a more in-depth feel onto how I color grade and how you can get it done pretty easy. Now, I'm not going to go in depth into how I color grade. Like I said, there is a video already made for you guys to check out on that. But what you want to essentially do is just bring your own style and your own look into your film. There is no right or wrong. It's totally up to you guys, what you guys like and what you guys want your final video to look like. Make sure you keep all your adjustments accurate and consistent throughout all your clips to make sure everything matches up and looks correct. You don't want some clips to be too saturated and some to be undersaturated, or some to be too contrasty and others to be a decontrasted clip. You want a nice spread through all your clips, something that really meshes all together and just makes it look that little bit more cinematic. Next on the list is adding a letterbox to your video. Now, by all means, don't use a letterbox in every single situation. Some situations don't require it and make your video look a little bit strange. So you really want to use it, especially when you're doing B-roll. That is the best time to use the letterbox, and it just adds a little sprinkle of cinematic dust on your video. Now in Final Cut Pro, it is very simple for us to use a letterbox. We have a preset, a plugin already made. We just drop and drag it, select the value that we want, and we're all good to go. In something like Premiere Pro, we have to go in, we have to create an adjustment layer and add a crop effect, and then crop in top and bottom 12%, and we get the cinema bars. Now, the thing I love about a letterbox is once you have a color grade set up and you add a letterbox on, straight away, it really makes your whole video look much more cinematic. But that said, remember, use it in the correct times. Don't overuse it. If you think it doesn't fit, it probably doesn't. Give it a miss. So the final step in making your videos more cinematic is film grain. This gets overlooked so much in filmmaking that I see on YouTube, and I just do not understand why. Film grain is used by every single professional colorist out there, and it really just makes your footage mesh together well and gives you that real nice creamy look. Now, if you guys haven't noticed, cinema is never ultra sharp. We have 4K cameras now that can produce ultra sharp images, but that is not the cinematic look. So what we want to do is we want to add film grain to be able to really just soften everything and mesh everything together, and it gives us that real cinematic look. In this case, I'm using the film grain plugin in Final Cut Pro. In this instance, I'm using 35mm grain, and that's pretty much just the gold standard. And just play around with the opacity. You don't want too much grain that it's completely noticeable and distracting. You just want that little bit just to really take the edge off the sharpness and just add a bit of creaminess to your footage. A little tip: if you are using film grain, it is a very good idea to use a noise reduction plugin just to get rid of that real ugly noise that is found in videos. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this video helped you guys, please leave a comment down below. And if there is anything else to add, please leave it in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And until next time, guys, I will catch you guys in the next one.